breaking away from prison and now to just life out here in society, So for doing over 12 years in prison, a lot of times people can ask me or they can be curious of how the transition has been for me, especially just like when it comes to like culture. Like, cause like, yo, like a lot has changed over the course of 12 years. And like I said, I was out for like little stints, like 8 months to 6 months, for 14 months out of 12, I've been in society. So those are only little snapshot, little brief windows. But I was able to see culture, for those little, couple months. And so people always ask me, they're like, yo, like, how is it adjusting back to society, when it comes to culture? Like, and how is that? And what's funny too is like, yo, I was aware of that. I remember going into prison like at a young age, at 18, and I used to see, you always see these old convicts. These old convicts look crazy. They just like got bugged out eyes. And they always be like, looking around them, looking crazy, like kind of like jumpish. And yeah, they probably bugged out. Not all lifers are like that. But I remember in my mind, I was like, man, like, is that what like a long time in prison does to you? What makes you bugged out? Because I don't want to be like that. They're watching everything, making sure nobody's sneaking up on them, always looking around. They're talking to you, but they're always looking around, always watching something. It's like, dang, that's crazy. But I remember when I first went to prison at 18, I was like, man, I don't want to end up like that. So I think I was aware of like the effects of people being institutionalized whenever I first went in, because I was already institutionalized as a kid, man, in and out of juvenile programs. But I think I did some things intentionally, especially like it's different when you catch small bids. Whenever you catch like small bids, it's like they're kind of they're vacations. Even though the first one for me was different because I was 18, like my world was snatched from me. Especially my baby mom was pregnant, about to have my first children. Um, but like the second bid, what I mean? It's like, all right, I'm used to it. I only got 2 years, quick vacay. But then when I got hit with my third bid, that was like a 9 piece, 8 years, 11 months. So that was a stretch. So it's like I had to approach that bid differently because I knew I was going to be gone for a long time. And one of the things I did intentionally every single day, man, without fail, pretty much, like religiously, every day I did two things. And that was, like when it comes to culture and when it comes to keeping up with society, that was watching the world news, sometimes the local news. Local news, like especially in North Florida, be boring. Unless like you're at a good prison, like in the city, then local news be straight. But I watch the world news and then I always watch TMZ right after. And I did that for two reasons. Number one is because being incarcerated, separated from society, separate from the culture, man, you can get lost in prison, man, because you really only worried about like when we go in the yard, when's the menu changing, especially when you got a lot of time, bro. You really ain't even stunting mail. You're not really stunting the phone. You're not really stunting visitation unless you got people riding out for you. You kind of focused on like you and like what's going on around you. So it's easy to get caught up in prison and just the whole prison world. Like that's literally your world. So you can like be out of the loop when it comes to society and even the news and politics. So unless you're intentional with keeping up with it. So I had to be intentional with watching the news every day. Just so I could be aware of what's going on in the world. But I especially watch TMZ every day. And there's a whole bunch of like, gossip about celebrities and all that. But as an artist who God gave me a vision about my release of being within the industry and, using music to proclaim the gospel and impact lives. And just being a lover of music, man, and just always being, just interested in the music culture. I would always watch TMZ, not just to keep up with like the music culture, but also too because TMZ was a really good inside look of what was going on in society. You know what I mean? Of like the cultural changes. You could see like the change in fashion, what's trending. You know what I mean? I remember like when I first started seeing like the real high shorts. I'm like, man, that's crazy, man. Like, just seeing the different trends of culture, of fashion, um, and like the baggy clothes is back in now and all these different things, the big shirts and all that. And especially too, like when I get on the phone with my homies sometimes, I could just hear like the lingo or the vernacular or, I just intentionally ask them about like what music's popping, I just ask them about cultural things. And especially when someone new comes in the dorm or like someone who comes into prison who just came off the streets. They normally like lace up everybody, how it is like in society right now. Not like it's being done intentionally, but you kind of just like pick it up. You know what I mean? How culture is changing. So for me, I think I was aware of like the change in culture coming home. But the biggest adjustment for me, I think, was just the fact that technology was crazy. And I think that was probably one of the most frustrating things when I came home was how difficult it was to adjust to technology. It's like, man, everything needs a password. And it's like I can't remember all these passwords. I didn't know how to like save the password on my phone. I'm losing passwords. I got to keep forgetting my password link, or I don't even know how to turn the TV on. It took me a while to figure out how to use an iPhone. So man, technology would really piss me off when I first came home. I remember I would literally be so aggravated. I would just like put down the phone, put down the remote, I would just walk away. And especially if I have nobody around me to show me how to do it, man, it was super frustrating. So technology was definitely different, man. Um, but I would say the fun part about it too, man, was like now I'm a like technology, like I'm an Apple fiend. Like I remember when these Apple, I think it's like the 13 or the 14, I forget which is the newest one. The newest one that's out, I got it. But yes, it is a 14. So when I was at work, at least I had a iPhone 12. I had put up at work, so I use it every day at work. I had it hidden in the locker. So then the 13 came out when I came home, but it's like, nah, I'm gonna wait till the 14 comes out. I'm gonna upgrade. I'm gonna buy the new one, whatever. So I'm such an Apple fiend now because I love technology so much. I remember I'm doing Uber driving. I'm watching the live feed from Apple about the new Apple 14. It's like that stuff's fun for me. Like things about culture, it's like some people don't care about it. Um, but for me, man, I love it. Just because like all of it's new and it's super interesting. And it's funny too, because I be killing it on socials. I'm a creator, I'm naturally creative. And I love just like, coming up with different skits to promote and market my music or different inspirational messages to share the gospel. Or just me, being goofy, being funny, whatever. I feel like personally, I feel like I'm a genius when it comes to social media. Uh I mean, even though like I'm not like viral yet, I mean I'm doing pretty good like on TikTok especially and Instagram. Um, but I know how to use like the app really good. And I remember some of my homies be asking me like, "Yo, how do you like do that with the captions or this and that and the cuts?" And I'm like, "Dang, like I'm supposed to be asking y'all this. You guys have been out here forever. You know what I mean? I'm the one getting everybody game like when it comes to socials." So I think that's something I really just enjoy and I've taken off with coming home. It's just the advancement in technology, even though it was difficult to adjust to. It's definitely been fun. But I guess another big thing, man, that's been difficult, or maybe this thing that had been obvious. I was talking about it earlier. I was talking about eye contact in prison, and that's a big thing. Just body language. Even man, I wasn't on that. I wasn't living that life in prison, man. Like Jesus radically transformed my life in prison. So prison for me, my incarceration was a missionary journey. It was the Lord blessed me with the opportunity to know Jesus more, to make Him known and proclaim the gospel, to make disciples in prison, full time grind in ministry. But at the same time, though, you're in a hostile, violent atmosphere and environment. You gotta be assertive. You kind of gotta be just on point, and not like where I was aggressive. I was still a very humble dude. But you can't let people try you. And also too, you gotta know your environment. You know what I mean? I think just the culture of prison. You know what I mean? You naturally adopt body language that can be like, I wouldn't say aggressive, um, but you can't be passive. So I remember like in prison, like I know in prison, like it's a big thing about eye contact, especially when you come into a dorm or new places or new people. Always make eye contact. If you're looking away or looking down, it can be like interpreted as fear. So I remember like coming home, like I noticed that a lot, that I always make eye contact with people when I'm like walking around or when I'm moving, or when people are like walking past me. And it's not like you're sizing them up, but I guess it kind of is that in prison. Not like to where I'm like looking for conflict or looking for trouble, but you kind of got to match that like cultural like way of living. You know what I mean? To show that you're not like, scary or whatever. You're just being observant and aware too. But I realized like coming home, like yo, people don't move like that out here. If anything, people ain't even looking at you. You know what I mean? People are their own lane doing their own thing, and I realized that like I'm walking around here like I feel like not like I'm sizing people, but I'm like making eye contact. It's like still in survival, hostile mode. It's like nah, everybody's doing their own thing. No one's even worried about you or me or their body language or your eye contact and all that. So I think that was something funny that I began to realize coming home. It's like dang, that's me being institutionalized, and I kind of had to adjust to that transition in society and in culture. And then also too, man, I always share this about disrespect, in prison, as I've already said multiple times, and I always say it, the biggest standard of living in prison is respect. And one of the biggest changes in society and culture coming home I noticed was disrespect. And because in prison, there's consequences for disrespect. There's violence. You get stabbed. You have to fight. You know what I mean? You got to answer that. There's repercussions. But out here in society, man, there's not. People are rude all the time. People cut you off in traffic. They flick you off, or they don't hold the door open for you. Or they'll rudely interrupt your conversation without saying anything, or they'll bump into you. Some people may not say nothing. Um, so I remember like going to work release, which was a huge benefit and blessing, helping me transition back into society. For those who don't know what work release is when you're still incarcerated on your prison sentence, but you have low custody to help you prepare for full release. They transition you to like an abandoned hotel. It's still ran by prison guards, but they allow you to leave, to go to work and come straight back. You got an ankle monitor on, you got a GPS unit on you, they track you, and they take 50% of your check. But it's still a huge blessing because not only can you save money before you go home, but also you get to briefly transition just by riding the bus, working with free world people. So I remember just going to work at work at least. I began to see how people are talking to each other, even though they're laughing and clowning. I'm like, dang, that's crazy. It's kind of disrespectful. And that's something I had to adjust to, being back out here in society. Um, so that's definitely been a transition and culture that I had to adjust to. And as I've already shared too, man, throughout my incarceration, I thank God.